of a department head hierarchy within that same school. If it's an all-academy school, then the answer is they really don't need to have both structures in place within that school. So there's an awful lot of savings just looking at how the school itself is adopting an academy model and how the people are assigned for specific work within that academy.
In Solano County, what we have seen as a result of the assessment, we are still receiving our ROP dollars that are in Flex, of course. And what we have done is we have flexed those dollars, and so we are now using those same dollars to serve many, many, many more programs, whereas before they served just ROP. We don't have ROP anymore. We now serve all career tech ed. But and there was a learning curve in there, and but what we have found is we as a countywide team, we are much more thoughtful where the money goes. Things are much more and well planned out about which sequence and pathways are going to grow and have met the criteria for being in demand by the workforce. We have also found that countywide, we have come together much more to write grants together. We just received a middle school grant, and 2 of our other schools have come in with us on that instead of everybody just going off on their own. And we have also found that the college, through their SB 70 grants, they have approached us, and they are now asking us to subcontract with them, again, to be resourceful and to provide career tech ed services to the middle schools. So the money, people are seeing that we are all working together, that we are taking career tech ed very seriously, that we are being accountable, and that we are serving more students and more programs, but we are working very hard to bring programs up to the high standards through the 11 elements, if they're not there or if there's a potential. And we are not passing through the money. We are very thoughtful in how those funds are spent, but we're writing grants like crazy. And I will tell you, we would not go back to the old model for anything. We feel that it is taking us in the direction that we need to go. And we do work with our partnership academies, and we're doing more for students, less money, but doing more for students, and we will continue to do that.
Well, one other thought in that vein that I think might be of interest to you as senators here in California, the Career Academy, we're a national agency based at Berkeley, the Graduate School of Ed, and we're supported primarily with private funds also, but we work across the country, and academies are spreading across the country. Mm-hmm. There are several other states now that have state grant programs, but it's seen as a California model. Mm-hmm. So it's something that's worked well here that's going elsewhere. Recently, the city of Nashville, Tennessee, decided to make all of its high schools all academies. So every single high school is structured around a series of academies, and it's seen such success in that part of the country. So it's a California success.
Yeah, one more question.
Yeah, again,
because then we have one more speaker after this panel.
In terms of particularly Solano County, and I like the fact that you're doing it for a whole, because to me, we got to take good programs, but get them in a whole system, mm-hmm. not just those winners and losers, mm-hmm. but a whole system. Are you seeing any impact as you go in this direction of a real systemic approach to CTE impact on your arts programs or your music or your language programs?
Yes, I would say positive impact on it. And what we did is we did take the ROP, and we've taken what was so good about ROP over the years, and we have now taken that and put it systemically into all of our career tech ed. And in working with all of our career tech ed, that does go also into the arts and into the other areas of the curriculums at the school. It has just totally broadened it's opened our eyes, and it's broadened our ability to be able to work with larger groups of people, whether it's in the arts or in the drama, in the math, in the science. It has just totally broadened, and it is more systemic now. There were, for us, I loved ROP. I was the past president 2 years ago for the KROP, California Association of Regional Occupational Centers and Leaders. That's a long word. And I loved ROP. But when we went through this assessment and we were having these very, very, very difficult times with budgets and trying to figure out how to sustain and grow, literally the light bulb went on for us when we saw that we were working with these programs here, but none of these programs here that were really part of this sequence, and then maybe had some connection to the arts or the other programs at the schools, and that's when it just went on for us. And so yes, it is moving into a very systemic way, and it doesn't happen overnight, but we've been working very hard, and we're continuing to work hard. And Susan and Gilly, are you back there? Gilly had to leave. There they are back there. Those two wonderful women are the program managers for Career Tech Ed and Workforce Development, and they are so integrated into our schools and into our business and industries that it's amazing the work they're doing.
Well, I really want to thank all of you, and I want to commend you. If I could just, I hope we can put you on the road with the idea of no standalone, but an integrated program, because that seems to be very, very hard for so many organizations. And I think that's tremendous. I also want to just note your enthusiasm as a person who is a teacher, who is working with kids in schools every day. I hear that all the time, that it has, this approach has really transformed the teaching and learning experience in a way that works wonders for our students, and that really generates great enthusiasm and creativity in our teachers. And I think that's wonderful. I hope you all will help us collate the very stunning statistics of success in terms of students staying in school, students doing better academically, students going on to higher education. Because I think the biggest barrier that we have to overcome is that notion that connecting academic learning to real life is somehow degrading academic learning or de-emphasizing academic learning. And I don't know. We used to laugh in the old days about, we call it school to career, not school to work, because we found out that no parent anywhere wants their child to grow up and work. Right. But they all want them to have careers.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you all for the work that you're doing and for the information that you have brought us. And finally, we're going to hear from Don Davies-Rougeau, the Associate Director of Undergraduate Admissions and Eligibility at the UC Office of the President, who is working with UC's Integrated Curriculum Institute, which really is looking at that task of how we make sure that our CTE courses are UC eligible and have the appropriate aforementioned academic rigor. Welcome to the committee.
Great, thank you very much. Assemblymember Furtani and Member Fong. Let's see here. Very excited to be here this morning, and happy to share with you some insight regarding the UC Curriculum Integration Institute. I'd like to, just for the to begin my remarks, just to clear the record on a couple of items that I think are important here as we begin to have these conversations around the roles of partnerships and collaborations and so forth. The University of California and the California Department of Education has had a very long-standing partnership regarding the integration of career technical education courses for A through G subject requirements. And All of the things that I'm about to share with you would not have been possible were it not for that partnership, particularly the funding that has come from the Department of Education. It's also important to note that in 2000-2001, we had a mere 258 A through G courses that were approved for, or CTE courses that were approved for A through G purposes. We now are pushing that number to close to 10,000. And what's significant about that number is that the Department of Education each year releases a report that looks at the distribution of career technical education courses approved for A through G purposes around the state and throughout our high schools. And part of that report, they note that approximately 42% of all courses throughout the state of any type that are offered in our high schools are approved for A through G purposes.
What was that percentage again?
Approximately 42%.
Of all classes.
Of all classes. And so the number of 10,000 career technical education courses would be approximately that same percentage amount, approximately 42 to 43%. So UC has set that as a bar for us, as a target for us in terms of moving forward in addressing the concerns that various entities have raised regarding the UC being a barrier in approving career technical education courses for A through G purposes. We also want to note that this is not an effort to supplant career tech ed courses and to impose the A through G curriculum into those content areas, but it's simply an effort to allow students and schools to maximize the opportunities that students have at every stage of their personal, academic, and career exploration and development. So with that, I'd like to share just a little bit of the history and the formulation of the UC Curriculum Integration Institute, also known as UCCI. I'd like to thank Sue Wilbur, who's the Director Emeritus of System-Wide UC Admissions, who was very integral in providing leadership in this process, but also key staff members from the Department of Education, Joe Radding, Lloyd McCabe, and Pat Ainsworth. Again, without their continued support, not only ideologically but also financially, UC would not have been able to do the things that we've done over the last couple of years related to the Institute and career technical education. This program began with a small grant program. UC was given funds to provide 10 $5,000 grants to a team of teachers around the state, any team of teachers, to develop integrated coursework. That team of teachers would get $1,000 each for a stipend, and then $3,000 would be used for resources, release time for conference costs, materials, etc. And so when I was hired in 2008, I was tasked with the implementation of this grant. And part of my role, again, based on the funding, was to travel around the state and work with career tech agencies and go to career technical education conferences, meet with teachers, and find out what the issues were and what the challenges were, and really to find out how UC could help. And part of what was shared with me during those efforts was that the course approval process was very difficult for those teachers. In fact, what was shared was that if you submitted a specific course title, a course might not be approved simply based upon the title. If there was a technical manual that was used as opposed to a quote-unquote traditional textbook, a course might not be approved. Certain language would often become a barrier. Applied, for example, might be a word that was taboo. And so it became very clear to me that our processes and our procedures were getting in the way of us at the UC moving forward and being able to really look at career technical education courses and assess the academic rigor that was in that content. And so it became a responsibility for us to really put on different lenses in the Office of the President's Articulation Unit to begin to help teachers move forward. And in fact, to encourage career technical education teachers who had previously submitted courses and had those courses denied to resubmit those courses. We also were tasked with the development of additional tools and resources to support those teachers in the development of these courses, and we've done that. So when we would go out and talk about these integration, what we call SIP grants, Curriculum Integration Project grants, there was much enthusiasm amongst teachers. Of course, if you're going to offer an opportunity to get funding to do something, people are excited about that. Having been a former high school teacher myself, I realize some of the shortcomings of that. However, you go back to your classroom, you get involved with the day-to-day, all that information gets lost in the shuffle when you focus on teaching your students. The other challenge is that we assume, or the program made certain assumptions. One was that the A through G content teacher and the CTE content teacher would actually find one another. And if they did actually find one another, that they would actually work together. If they did actually work together, they would actually have the expertise to allow them to develop and integrate these kinds of courses. And of course, if they got through all of that, they would actually have the time to do that. And we realized that those were all challenges that we needed to address if we were going to make this program successful. As part of my management training at the UC, I went through a program called the Business Officer Institute. It was a 4-day training program that was designed to bring in new managers to really give them all the tools and resources and knowledge that they needed in order to become successful managers in the university system. And so as I began to think about the challenges that the teachers were faced around developing curriculum, I thought that this would be a really efficient model that we could adopt and tweak so that it would facilitate the development of courses and the training of teachers. And I'm very intentional when I use the word facilitate, because UC is not trying to be prescriptive here. Our task is to facilitate a process that will allow teachers to be trained to develop integrated courses and then to empower them to go out and teach other teachers around the state how to do that. And so at the end of the day, what we do now with these $5,000 grants is we give those grants to the graduates of the Institute to support their work out in the field in training other teachers to develop this curriculum. It's also important to note that one of the challenges that we face at the Office of the President in approving courses is that we would often see one of two approaches. We would see an A through G course that had already been approved that might add some career tech components, maybe a few projects, something of that nature, but it wasn't really fully integrated. It didn't fully integrate the two contents, and vice versa. We might see a CTE course that might add a few academic content chapters from a textbook or a few assignments or things of that nature, but it didn't create a fully robust, fully integrated course. And so our goal, a third goal at the Institute, is to bring teachers together to start from scratch, that they're going to unravel their content standards in each area and start from the very beginning of integrating that content. One of the challenges for them is to find commonality amongst their content. And if you look at the content standards, you often will find that there's great overlap in the language and the goals and objectives of the standards. And once we bring teachers together at the Institute, they begin to see that. Now let me say this is not an easy process for these teachers. You have mathematicians who own their content. You have finance and business teachers who own their content, and it is very difficult. If you ask any teacher who spends the summer rewriting their curriculum, it's very difficult to decide what they should teach and what they shouldn't. It's all important. So imagine bringing two people who are fully committed to teaching all of their content together and saying, how are you going to integrate this? It's a very difficult process for them. But we bring together the resources, we provide the space, and we give them the time to allow them to do that. And I think we've been very successful at this time. I'd also like to note that one of our very specific focus was to look at areas in the A through G subject spectrum that did not have a lot of integrated courses approved for A through G purposes, CTE courses.
Like what, for example?
As was mentioned earlier, history, social science, subject area A, English language arts, subject area B, and mathematics, subject area C. We have, of that 10,000, the vast majority of those courses have been approved in either laboratory science, visual performing arts, or the G elective. And so we knew that there were some challenges, either real challenges or perceived challenges around integrating content in those other three areas, the mathematics, the language, English language arts, and the history, social science. So we intentionally focused on those areas. In fact, less than 1% of all A through G courses approved that are CTE were in those areas. And so we knew that we had a problem that needed to be addressed. And oftentimes folks would tell us it was not possible. And we disagreed with him. And in fact, our goal is to bring teachers together to prove that the impossible is in fact possible. So how do the teachers get to the UCCI? It's a very simple process initially. Again, we're not trying to be prescriptive. And so as I noted earlier, teachers aren't able to necessarily find one another. They all might have great ideas that they share, but they don't find the other person across the aisle to help them develop that curriculum. One example of this is business algebra. Everyone talks about how we should have a business algebra course. I heard it over and over and over and over again. Teachers were developing these courses in isolation, even though there were peers around the state who wanted to do this. So our first institute focused on mathematics and finance and business, and what we said was we sent it out to every contact that we could think of, both on the A through G side of the house and on the Career Tech Ed, ROPs, California Partnership Academies, principals, counselors, everyone we could think of. We sent this information out and said, we want to convene a 4-day gathering of teachers who are interested in integrating these two subject areas. Please submit to us a short curriculum abstract that describes a course that you would like to develop. Once we receive those abstracts, we look to see where there's critical mass. So in other words, if there's enough teachers who are interested in a similar idea, maybe not exactly the same, but a similar idea, we will bring those teachers together at the Institute and give them the resources to develop these courses. We're very intentional that the curriculum teams, as we call them, are half A through G subject area and half CTE. There may be others involved in the room, and those might be principals or content specialists or counselors or whomever, but we make certain that we create balance between the CTE and the core academic content subject experts. We have a planning committee every year that we assemble, or we have a planning committee that we assemble for every unique institute, and it's based upon the subject area and the industry sectors. And so we recruit people with the help of the Department of Education and other agencies to assemble those planning committees, and they help us determine what the focus should be for each institute. We also develop and train facilitators. So each curriculum team, there's usually 6 to 8 working on 6 to 8 separate courses. Each of those has a facilitator that's trained by our office to help engage the teachers and move them through that process. There's also one A through G content subject area expert in the room that's provided by the Office of the President. Our facilitators were initially recruited again from the career technical education agencies, but then we've begun to recruit facilitators from graduates from the Institute. So folks who've gone through the Institute, these are teachers who've gone through the Institute, now come back and are looking to continue their training and to train others in that process. One of the benefits for the participants, when they graduate from the Institute, they become part of our cadre of experts. And so the cadre of experts are a pool of individuals around the state who have training regarding curriculum integration and A through G subject requirements. And any teacher or other folks who want to develop curriculum in this fashion can contact a member of the cadre, and that person will assist them in answering questions about how to develop the curriculum in the future. At each institute, we're very intentional also about inviting some presenters or participants from out of state. There are great ideas from folks around the country who are doing this work, and we want to bring those folks to share those ideas with our participants. We also want those folks to see what's happening at the Institute and take those ideas back to their states and their local districts as well. There's a great example of a team of teachers who do this work in Loveland, Colorado. They have a geometry and construction course. There's a geometry teacher and a construction teacher who came together a number of years ago to try to do this work. And they have a great story that they share. I won't go into great detail, but they have a great story that they share about how difficult it was and the lessons and challenges that they had to learn and overcome in order to create a successful course. And now, each year, their students build a house using principles of geometry and construction. They sell that house to a local nonprofit through an auction. They take those resources and they fund their program for the next year. The students also learn civic engagement. They also learn leadership skills and public speaking skills as they go out and solicit funding for the program and do presentations about the program to community leaders. So it's an excellent model, and we have engaged them in the Institute as well. What are some of the challenges that we've learned from our participants? And again, we are open, and our eyes and ears are open to the participants because they are the ones who are at the front lines doing this work every day. One of the challenges, a number of the challenges that we've heard from them, and this is consistent at each institute, is that they're concerned about who gets to teach the course. If you integrate a course that's mathematics and finance and business, is it a mathematics teacher who gets to teach the course, or is it a finance and business teacher who gets to teach the course? So there's a credentialing and a certification issue here that that must be addressed. That we feel must be addressed if we're going to move forward in fully implementing a linked learning multiple pathways integrated approach. There's also the issue of the structure of school days and the distribution of resources. Some of these courses can be taught in a single class period. Some of these have to be multiple periods. Some of these are multi-year courses. So we have to think about all of these different types of models and how they might be implemented in the school sites. Of course, there's the concern about how do we scale UCCI? Are we able to really truly develop enough courses through these 2 institutes a year that we do to make it worthwhile or to have any type of impact across the state? And then the distribution of the courses, and then how do schools adopt these courses? Since we're early on in this process, we have not had a large number of the courses adopted simply because by the time the courses are created, it takes up to 8 months at the earliest, and maybe longer for schools to go through their adoption process to get them into their master calendars and then get them teaching in the classrooms. We do have a few schools who have adopted courses, and so we will be monitoring them in the coming months. So there are great opportunities here, of course. This is a new way to integrate CTE and A through G, as I mentioned earlier. We're building courses from scratch, from the ground up, as opposed to simply value added. This also expands the UC and CSU's understanding of and acceptance of innovative teaching at the high school levels. It's important to note that BORS, which is our Board on Admissions and Relations with Schools, is very much on board with supporting this project. They're the ones who ultimately are responsible for approving the courses for A through G purposes. And the chair, Bill Jacob, who's a mathematician at UC Santa Barbara, the vice chair, George Johnson, who's an engineer at UC Berkeley, are very, very much in support of the work that's happening at the Institute and of the courses that are developed. I would also add that this process is simply one more tool that can be used to address what I describe as the silent revolt in California, and this is our dropout crisis. Many of our students are dropping out not because they're incapable, but simply because they are not engaged. And this is their statement to us that we need to do something, and we need to do something fast. Developing innovative courses to re-engage students on the margins. So we're very intentional about that. And part of our process is to develop courses at the 9th and 10th grade level, although some courses will be developed at the 11th and 12th grade level. Courses developed that are innovative at the 9th and 10th grade level are those courses that are going to initially engage students. So to give you an example of something that we talk about often, again, around the Algebra 1 issue. If a student comes in as a 9th grader, let's imagine for a moment, they come in as a 9th grader and they want to take algebra. They have to take algebra. So typically their choice is algebra. Okay? If you're a math purist, that's great. You want to take algebra. But what if you have an interest in business? If your school offers only algebra, that's what you have to take, and maybe you're not that excited about it. But if your school offers business algebra, then you're excited about it, and that's another option for you. But what if you're an artist? What if you're an artist and you know you have to take algebra? You're really not that excited about business algebra. You're not so much excited about pure algebra either, even less so. How about a Da Vinci Algebra 1 course that's based on teaching algebra through the use of digital media integrated arts? So this was a course that was also developed at the Institute a year ago in May of 2011. So how do we accomplish this? We bring teachers together, we empower them, we give them the tools, we give them the resources, we let them decide which courses should be taught, and then away we go. UCCI also has established some very unique partnerships. We've had an opportunity to gather a number of different agencies and organizations at the Institute. Thanks to the attention that we have received based upon Senate Pro Tem Darrell Steinberg's efforts, lots of folks are interested in coming to the Institute. The first Institute was small. No one knew about us. We were under the radar. Now we're getting lots of requests to come and observe. And so we have a special classification for observers. And the Institute's work as a whole has allowed for the establishment of great partnerships. The California Subject Matter Projects, again, the Department of Education, the California Partnership Academies, NAF, California Support Network, WestEd, etc. A couple notable ones, we have recently partnered with KQED, who has offered to assist us in integrating a number of their educational resources in their on their website that can be used for teachers, and using the Institute as a way to get that information out to teachers and the participants. We've also had an ongoing relationship with the California Partnership Academies. Recently, they were given program status, and that was approved by the UC Faculty Boards Committee. What program status means is that anytime a Partnership Academy course is approved for A through G purposes, any partnership academy in the state can adopt that course without having to resubmit the content to the UC for additional review and approval. So any partnership academy can do that. And I should add that the courses developed at the Institute also have program status. So once they're developed and approved, any school can adopt those courses and use that curriculum. One of the requirements for having program status is that you have an accountability mechanism put in place. The Partnership Academies program is building out that accountability mechanism, and they are going to have their academy teachers teaching their program status courses evaluated annually at their Partnership Academy conference, which happens once a year. So we're working with them to allow UCCI courses to be adopted by the partnership academies, and then to go through that accountability measure as well. So it's been a great relationship that we've had with them. And again, part of what we're doing is we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're simply trying to partner with other folks out there who have great ideas and great structures and great models that we can help facilitate as well. UCCI is intentionally, as we say, dynamic. It's intentionally innovative, and it's intentionally organic, which means as we move forward with implementing these institutes, we will address whatever the needs are around the state as brought to our attention by the various planning committees and the different organizations who are involved. So, for example, we know that green curriculum is an area of high interest, and it's beginning to be integrated into the industry sectors. And so we decided a year ago that the upcoming institute in November will focus on the development of green curriculum around 5 industry sectors. So we're very excited that we have that type of nimbleness and flexibility with the planning of the institutes to be able to accommodate upcoming and interesting ideas. Some of the next steps. One of the things that you probably noted that I've not mentioned is an involvement with business leaders and with community-based organizations. We are anxious to begin to move into a planning phase to figure out how we can engage those two partners more closely. One thought that I've had is that we would encourage certain local businesses, for example, to partner with schools who adopt some of these courses that are related to their specific industry or their specific business. So, for example, if you are a company that has a television station or cable station, etc., we have a course that focuses on writing in the film industry. And so maybe a film company might adopt a school, provide internships for the students who are enrolling in that course, provide resources for training for teachers during the summer who are teaching that course, and further that partnership. And, of course, always a little financial support is always appreciated. Some of the courses don't align with the business sectors. They're probably more aligned with community-based organizations, so we would like to engage our community-based organizations to establish very similar partnerships. I'd like to share with you just some details around some of the participants that were at our last institute. Again, as I mentioned, we had a unique process where we began to have a number of observers. And as we began to invite folks and extend invitations, we realized that we had this unique collection of individuals, and we thought it would be an opportunity to have them get together for a couple of hours at the institute and really begin to have these conversations about about the direction of education in the state of California. And as was mentioned earlier, everyone's working on the same idea. But we're all doing it a little bit differently. And how do we bring these common ideas together? So just to share a list of the stakeholders, the representatives from the Department of Education. We had our UC Board's chair and vice chair. We also had our vice provost from the Office of the President for Educational Partnerships. There were high school teachers and high school principals as part of this group. Professors from the CSU, California Community Colleges, and University of Oregon. Connect Ed was represented. We had someone from the Napa County Office of Education, CTE ROP manager, California Business Education Leadership Project, CTE Academy teachers. The Ed Trust West was there, KQED, two representatives from the National Academy Foundation, the Career Academy Support Network, West Ed, a research firm, the College Board, and our California Subject Matter Project folks were all in attendance. And it was a great and robust discussion, and our Vice Provost for Educational Partnerships, Russ Rumberger, who does a lot of research on dropouts, was able to take that information to Superintendent Torlakson. And then finally, I'd like to just share with you and give you a real detailed, real detailed information about the types of courses that we're developing at the Institute, so you can get a sense of the scope of what we're doing. In spring of 2010, which was our first Institute, we developed a business algebra course, a finance and business algebra 1 course, a business statistics course, and as I mentioned, the Da Vinci algebra course, which is currently being taught at South Tahoe High School. It has an enrollment of 53 students. In fall of 2010, we focus on history, social science, and English, and we combine that with arts, media, and entertainment, education, child development, and family services, health science and medical technology, hospitality, tourism, and recreation, marketing, sales, and services, and public services. Of that, we had 8 curriculum teams that developed 8 courses. We had a culinary world history course, integrated marketing and English, a journey for justice course, which has looked at criminal justice through the lens of American government, issues of social justice in the American government and education, world history and cultural identities through media design arts, designing the American dream, writing in the film and media sectors, medical America, our body, our history, and applied medical English, which is currently being adopted as well. And in our most recent institute, spring of 2011, we combined mathematics and laboratory sciences, and I've given you a copy of our program. And there's other copies in the back for audience participants or attendees. We combine mathematics and laboratory science with engineering and design, finance and business, and hospitality, tourism, and recreation. And we developed 6 courses at that institute. Business Algebra 2 course, so we're continuing in developing not just courses in isolation. We developed an engineering algebra course, an engineering GeoLand, which is geometry and engineering geometry with physics, cooking with science, and algebra at your service, which is a hospitality-based Algebra 1 course. In the fall of 2011, we'll combine history, social science, and laboratory science with energy and utilities, energy and design, hospitality, tourism and recreation, public service, and transportation, with a very specific focus on green curriculum. And then in the spring of 2012, our focus will be on arts, media, and entertainment. Thank you. Any questions?
Let me grab onto this for a second.
Okay.
Paul, questions?
Yeah, this is a great program. I never knew that existed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're happy to have you attend anytime you like.
Yeah, there's not very many community colleges attending this.
No,
development.
that's true, and that is again one of our shortcomings. We recognize where we have gaps in the program and in the participation, and we're continuing to reach out to them to have them involved in that process.
And how many participants do you accept? It's on a rolling basis?
It varies. It depends on what the combination of subject areas and industry sectors. So our first one, we did one subject area, one industry sector. We thought we'd start small. So we had 80 participants. And then in the second one, we went with 2 industry sectors, or 2 subject areas and 5 industry sectors. We had over 225 applicants for 80 slots. So it varies depending on the combination
Great program.
Thank you very much.
How long have you been doing this then?
This started in 2008. The planning of it, the conceptualization and planning was 2008, and then the first institute was implemented in the fall of 2010. So we were able to secure the funding from the Department of Education, and with that funding, we were actually able to hire 3 full-time staff who are responsible for the implementation, and then we've just added a 4th person just this past year, and then there are about 4 others, myself and 3 others in the Office of President who manage it. But we would not, I have to reiterate, we would not be doing this were not for the funding from the Department of Education. It would not be possible. So.
2008, it seems to me there's got to be another big ingredient. And the funding, I hear what you're saying, and I see it just in your enthusiasm and presentation that somebody somewhere, I don't know if at the very top, the president's office or somebody said, look, we better get on this and get an initiative going and move forward.
Sure.
Or be left behind. I mean, it seems that someone said, look, we got to go do this.
Yeah,
it wasn't being done.
Yeah, well, the story, again, as I mentioned earlier, when I was hired in 2008, Sue Wilbur was very intentional about having someone come in who had been a high school teacher and also had UC admissions experience and also had, interestingly enough, submitted courses to UC and had them denied. And so I was very familiar with that process from the other side of the aisle. And the Department of Education gave us some additional funding at the end of 2008 and said, you need to come up with a way to spend this money. And so, again, we were implementing our grant program, but it became very clear to me, because we weren't getting a lot of applications, that the grant program in isolation was not sufficient. And so, and we had a lot of pressure from the CTE community to make some strides around the approval of course development, and a lot of support on the Department of Education to say, create additional tools to do this. And so my thought was, we need to bring teachers together, and we need to empower them. We need to make them at the forefront of this process, give them the resources and the tools to do this. And I thought about that Business Officers Institute. And what was essential with that was it was rigorous, the content was relevant, and when I left there, I had tools that I could immediately implement in my day-to-day work. And then there was follow-up support. So it allowed me to go and do other things and access other training programs. And so I thought this is a fantastic model to address this critical need. And so I crafted out a skeletal program. I ran it past a few people up and down the state, and people thought it was a good idea, and we had the funding from the department to do it. So away we went.
Again, I would add one more ingredient, and this was really spoken to when we had the panel on the academies. And that's that whole issue of enthusiasm.
Yes.
Interest. I mean, that all the other stuff is really critical. But there's got to be that spark, that enthusiasm, and I think that speaks also to the issue of, what did you call it, the silent revolt.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. You know, that's what they're sort of telling us, you know, that...
That's right.
Extraordinary presentation. Thank you. I apologize for Chair. She got called out. I mean, this is sort of our world these days. We've got multiple balls in the air trying to juggle. This is going to be. This is being recorded. I think there's one other comparison. I'm also on the Utilities Committee, and one thing is we look at issues of alternative energy and different ideas in that field. What I think the industry is looking for in that area is a policy initiative on our part that then will make them say, okay, they're committed to this, so I'll invest. And I think what you're talking about is the same thing.
That's right.
If we're committed to this, if we're committed to CTE having rigor, the issue of A through G, the issue of all of this working together in a holistic system, then I think the educators will invest.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt the ideas are there, the creativity's there.
That's right.
So I think we're on the threshold of a very, very exciting time.
Yeah. I would also add, again, as I mentioned, Bill Jacob, the chair of boards, George Johnson, the vice chair, who set that A through G policy and determined what courses will and will not be approved, are fully supportive of this. Russell Rumberger, also President Udoff, also very supportive of this, and I think it's a good time for us to move forward on this in partnership. So.
Any other questions, Madam Chair?
No, I don't have any other
Excellent.
questions, but it was
Extraordinary presentation.
an excellent presentation, too. We look forward.
Thank
Don't
you
be
very
afraid
much.
to invite some legislators to the
And
institute.
we'd be happy to have you anytime.
Actually, I was thinking the very same thing.
The next institute will be November 6th through the 9th. It'll be in Santa Barbara. And the idea behind that was with the whole green revolution that started there, and we would be able to tap in with their Brin School of Environmental Science.
Oh,
So,
great.
Very good.
Good. Right.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good.
Thank you.
Well, I have to point out, since he said that because you talked about your legislation. Well, the fact that, I did legislation that set up the Green Technology Career Academy,
Absolutely.
which trying to link the economic development with the state, with the very exciting scientific and sociological changes that are going to happen around here. But that was a very good presentation. Okay, this is we're going to have comments from the public now, and would people who would like to comment, ask questions, criticize, make suggestions. And because it's close to 12:30, I'm going to ask if people could say what they need to say in a minute or so.
Of course. Thank you, Senator Hancock and Assemblymember Warren Fortani. But this has been just a tremendous presentation today, the whole thing. Jonathan Lightman, on behalf of the Faculty Association of California Community Colleges, we have a contract to represent the California Community College for Association for Occupational Education. It's a coalition of the deans and the faculty and the staff who deliver the CTE and economic development at the community colleges. And that's on whose behalf I'm speaking today. I would like to make a couple of comments. Assemblymember Fortani, you discussed in your legislation the need for the state strategic plan and the need to make it regionalized. And this is exactly the conversation that is occurring with the regional consortium and the community colleges, as well as with the CCC AOE. And it's something that we believe very strongly in and want to be a part of the effort. In terms of for the community colleges, which really weren't represented in this hearing, specifically, there are a couple of issues that you may want to consider moving forward. One is the need for more common assessment tools. Assemblymember Block has his Assembly Bill Senate 43 on this topic, and that is something that will help align programs better, help place students better, and eliminate some of the redundancies. Another issue is the alignment of community colleges with K-12. SB 70 was mentioned in the hearing. This is extremely important for community colleges, not just for alignment of classes, but also for alignment of programs, and it's something that does need to
I think I have legislation trying to extend that program.
Yeah, it's very important.
We hope it continues. Yeah, it is. It is.
On another topic, the whole issue of enrollment, and this is something that has impacted CTE and the community colleges, where students who are scrambling to get into a course sometimes take a CTE course just because they have to comply with their financial aid. It's not necessarily a track that they want to pursue, but they may actually be taking a spot from someone who legitimately wants to pursue a track in the CTE program. And so this is somewhat complicated because it involves issues of the budget. It involves issues of having sufficient counselors, which we've been lacking in the community colleges forever. And also there is another conversation within the LAO and with the Chancellor's Office Consultation Council on priority enrollment in terms of how do we exist with the level of resources that we've been given and to make sure that their CTE programs are working. And finally, I do need to put in a plug for professional development. This is also something that the state withdrew its support from the community colleges years and years ago. There is a component of professional development money in the Basic Skills Initiative. It's extremely important, particularly as we discussed in this hearing, ideas of contextualized learning, because we know that that is so fundamental for our students moving through the career technical education programs. This week, the Center on Law and Social Policy released some statistics which I think that would be very important to close with, and that is that the state unemployment rate for less than a high school graduate is 13.7%, for a high school graduate 12.3%, But if you have an AA or an AS, it's 8.1%, and a BA or a BS at 6.6%. So even in an era of chronic high unemployment, it's something that we have to make a priority to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lightman. I just, since you mentioned funding, have to take the opportunity to say I hope the community college system and everyone will take note of the fact that, yes, we need more revenue to keep our great public systems thriving.
And we agree with that completely. Thank you.
We do, and that 2/3 votes make places ungovernable. We would not have a budget today as much as there was heartbreak in it for many of us concerning the numbers and the inadequacy of the funding that we were able to give our public institutions. But because we were able to allocate money by a majority, we now have a budget, and I believe we need to work on the revenue side too. 2/3 votes mean that the minority can control the majority and no one can be held accountable. But I hear your plea, and I hope we can meet your the need that you referred to. Well, thank you.
Hello, I'm Chair Hancock and Chair Furutani. Katie Valenzuela with Public Advocates. And first of all, we'd like to thank you for holding this hearing. It's so important for us to remember that we really can't make policy in isolation. It is so crucial to look at the totality of the circumstances and factors to really successfully implement the ideas we're trying to advance. So we appreciate the discussion that's happened today and apologize for missing it. Unfortunately, we thought it was at one later in the day, so we kind of had to run over here. So we fully support college and career preparation. This is not just based on our support of the ideals behind linked learning and partnership academies and what they can do to go beyond career tech ed and really integrate it with academics and create a new system of learning. We base this also on stories we hear from students in the field talking about these low-level, non-rigorous CTE courses that they get put into that really leave them with no tools when they graduate high school and take them further away from preparation for any option. And we hear this from students who want to take A to G but can't because they don't have enough courses. And as a student who grew up in Oildale in Kern County, I saw this firsthand with many of my peers not being able to go to any college when they graduated, and now they work in the oil fields. We use this principle to found the Campaign for Quality Education, which is dozens of grassroots groups that believe that the true opportunity to learn rests on the principle that we should prepare every student 100% for college and careers, so that when they graduate, they actually have meaningful options, and if they have, versus today where sometimes they only have one option, if any. We believe in the data that we've seen that was cited earlier today. This 2010 longitudinal study that of over 5,000 CTE students, 89% of them said they wanted to do both CTE and college prep. This idea that there's career prep students and there's college prep students is really obsolete, and we know this from the field and we know this from the research. Students want both. And this is something that's even more critical when we look at the populations of students taking career tech ed, as they are more likely to be vulnerable students, and we need to make an even higher priority in making sure this is done in a way that gives them what they need to do to be successful after they graduate. And in closing, we believe that this is an approach that is really crucial for our future labor demands. And to iterate this point, I'd like to quote the analysis on a bill from Mr. Assemblymember Furutani, AB 1315, the Gateway Demonstration Project. In the Assembly Education Committee's analysis and support, it quotes the California Manufacturers and Technology Association is saying, and I quote, even as we expect baby boomers to begin to retire in increasingly large numbers, current rates of degree attainment in our public systems, especially the rates of basic skill students who move on to earn post-secondary credentials, are far below those that will meet the need of California's employers for skilled workers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Martha Zaragoza Diaz, and I'm representing Californians Together, which is a statewide coalition of parents, teachers, education advocates, and civil rights organizations committed to securing equal access to quality education for all students. I want to thank Assemblymember Furutani and Senator Hancock for convening this very timely hearing on the issue of career tech education and post-secondary education. My comments today are going to focus primarily on English learners, specifically long-term English learners because we believe that this is a student population that has unique challenges that need to be addressed by CTE and also our post-secondary education institutions. As you know, English learners face a double challenge of learning a new language while acquiring academic content at the same time. Currently, in California, English learners, actually there are 6.2 million students enrolled in our public schools that are Hispanic Latino students, of which and they comprise 50% of the student population, so it's a large percentage of students that are either Hispanic or Latino, and approximately 25% or 1.4 million of that student population are English learners. So this is a significant population. In 2008, Californians Together identified long-term English learners as a major policy for our work. And we conducted a survey of 40 school districts throughout California in 2009 through 2010. And we were able to collect information on 175,734 English learners in grades 6 through 12. Almost one-third, or 31%, of the state's secondary school English learners. What emerged from the data is a startling picture of students that are being left behind in our secondary schools, parents that are uninformed, educators unaware, and districts still trying to figure out what to do for these students. We developed a publication which you have a summary of, referred to as Reparable Harm, Fulfilling the Unkept Promise of Educational Opportunities for California's Long-Term English Learners, which provides a summary of the data and our recommendations. But some of the major findings that we found through this data is that for schools placed in program improvement or high priority status of the schools that we surveyed, 17% of those schools, English learners no longer receive science and social studies. In 28% of the schools, English learners did not receive art or music, and almost half of those schools had reduced art and music as part of the corrective action. We also found that English learners are often taught by teachers without the preparation, support, or strategies to address their needs. Secondary school teachers are generally not prepared to teach reading and writing skills, nor are they trained in language development. The majority of long-term English learners want to go to college, but they are unaware of their academic skills or academic record, and the courses they are taking are not preparing them to reach that goal. That's what our data showed. Neither students, their parents, nor the community know that they are in academic jeopardy. So these findings highlight the unique challenges we face in ensuring that long-term English learners graduate from high school prepared to undertake post-secondary education and career opportunities. We do have specific recommendations. Our report does have concrete suggestions about what a comprehensive program for long-term English learners should look like and should include. Other actions that you may consider taking would be capturing data on the types and quantity of CTE classes as well as A through G courses taken by English learners as well as Latino students and other student groups. We think that this could be captured in CalPADS if it's well implemented and if it's sufficiently resourced, right?
Implemented, yes.
I know. Yeah. Developing measures of accountability for good career preparation with a focus on long-term English learners, and other student subgroups. Monitoring of CTE courses and instituting mechanisms to build capacity and skills among the teaching force so that they are more prepared to work with English learners, especially long-term English learners. You probably are aware of Senate Bill 547 by Speaker Steinberg. He is proposing several indices that would replace our current academic performance index, one of which is the establishment of a career readiness index to be comprised of multiple valid, reliable, and stable measures of pupil preparedness for career. We believe that this is a good first step in taking a look at the issue of accountability measures for our students. So in essence, we believe that in order to ensure that multiple pathways work for all students, including English learners and long-term English learners, that their unique needs need to be addressed. And we look forward to working with you, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there are no other comments from the public, I just want to thank everybody who testified today, who shared their information and experience with us, and we look forward to embarking with you on what should be a great adventure, both in academic excellence, in academic equity, and creative teaching and learning. Thank you all so much. The hearing is adjourned.
Thank you.